The headlamp scored the wall in a narrow cone of light, and there it was, 5 clean notches, evenly spaced, each one like a small breath taken and held. The stone around them was dusty, the edges soft with age, but the cuts themselves were crisp enough to stop my volunteer from reaching out and smoothing them with a gloved thumb. Listen closely now. What was someone counting in the dark?
I'm Sam Nang. Find somewhere dark. Put your headphones on if you have them and lean in. This one is called Tally Ledger. Tonight, we follow a volunteer who keeps notebooks in a headlamp-lit world and the slow arithmetic that a tunnel kept for decades. The rules are simple. Notice carefully. Resist the urge to touch. Ask questions slowly.
The volunteer, Mara, is not an adventurer in the shiny sense. She's a local with steady hands and a checklist. It's late autumn, cold enough that breath fogs in the mouth of the drift, and the mine above the hamlet has been partly reclaimed by collapse and ivy. This mine fed a town for generations. Pumpkins on porches, a single diner, a payday rhythm you could set your watch by. Mara's job that week was routine. Map hazards, note loose ribs, flag places where the timber might fail. She took photos, she measured, she wrote dates, and on the second walk, she saw the first tally.
At first, it looked like graffiti, just someone idly scratching boredom into stone. But the marks didn't have the scatter of graffiti. There was pattern, a rack of 5, a single notch here, a crossed mark there, and tiny initials 2 inches away. Mara almost touched it, then stopped. You can imagine the temptation, the tactile temptation of a human trace. But she left her fingers in her pockets. Good instinct. That hesitation mattered.
Over the next few weeks, every time Mara walked a different drift, she found similar sequences. Notches repeated at roughly regular intervals, often near equipment caches or at junctions where miners shifted direction. The pattern suggested rhythm, counting footsteps, tallying loads, marking dates between pay cycles. Not random scratches, something closer to a ledger carved in stone. The mind wants a story. Was it counting days, loads, men on shift, or something else entirely?
This is where the story widens. I spoke to a mining historian, her name is Dr. Holloway, who explained that tally marks have a long practical life underground. She said, miners made marks for pay, for tracking timber, for counting couplings or empty skip trips. A notch isn't a poem, she told me. It's usually a ledger problem solved with stone. But she also warned about reuse. Marks get recarved, repurposed, compounded over decades. The same notch could be part of 3 different counting systems stacked together by accident of time.
I spoke with a stone conservator next, someone who spends her days coaxing fragile stories out of rock without breaking them. She walked me through documentation choices that do not involve leaving a mark elsewhere. Photograph from a safe distance, she said. Note orientation. Measure the spacing between marks. Never attempt rubbings unless you're authorized and under conservation supervision. Rubbings flatten context, she reminded me. The patina, the weathering that tells time, can be lost under careless reproduction. And then there's the cave safety officer, who kept our feet very much on the ground. He pointed out that these drifts are unstable. A finger on a brittle rib, a boot kicked at the wrong angle, the hum of too many phone lights. Any of that can be the straw that topples a thin ceiling. Don't go back for better pictures, he said plainly. Call us. Let professionals assess. We don't want volunteers cleaning up a scene that collapses into something worse. It's a sober line between curiosity and risk. Mara took careful photographs. No flash that would heat the dust too quickly. No leaning into the drift. And she began mapping. Lines on paper. Coordinates. The odd initial that repeated. One photograph showed a tiny carved initial. A rounded R made with a deliberate hand. Back in the archive, an old pay ledger from the hamlet, a last name popped up with that initial, a man who worked those shifts 100 years ago. The match was tentative, but the gut tightened. You can imagine Mara's 2 competing instincts. Tell someone and possibly revive a missing life, or leave the marks untouched and preserve them for proper study.
This is where things change. Mara reached out to a local heritage group. They answered with the language of preservation and bureaucracy, forms to fill, chain of custody protocols, limited access permits. They also called in the county investigators to make sure there were no human remains or recent hazards. The experts insisted on non-invasive documentation first, high-resolution imagery taken by trained technicians, 3D scans if possible, and conservation notes that kept the area sealed until structural risks were ruled out. That decision drew relief and criticism in equal measure from the town. Some wanted access, others wanted closure.
There was a moment, late in a cold, mucky drift, when Mara, a conservator, and a safety team moved as a single careful organism. The lamplight skated over the same sequence of notches she'd first found. A conservator set a small scale beside the marks. A technician held a specialized light. The safety officer called out measured warnings about footing. The conservator ran a soft brush along the face to reveal faint remnants of soot, and for a second the air tasted older, coal dust and the ghost of lamp oil. It felt like reading a page someone had been turning in the dark for decades.
At the high point, if you can call it that, an archivist at the lab compared the distribution of marks across the map and held up a simple, quiet hypothesis. These sequences line up with work rhythm breaks. 5 notches, then a cross mark, then initials, like a worker noting 5 loads and done, or 5 days then payday. But the archivist also said something I didn't expect. Sometimes these marks were personal diaries. A single notch could mean a child born at home, the end of a drink-free week, or the tally of days someone promised to wait for a loved one. Stone keeps practical records and private promises in the same breath. No single meaning is safe. The fallout was procedural and emotional. The county closed a section of drift for safety and conservation. Archive requests came in, slow and respectful, or not, depending on who you asked. Local families combed through old payrolls and journals. Some found names that matched initials and felt a strange partial consolation. Others found nothing and left a silence that was harder to place than grief. The town argued in the diner about access. Who owns these marks? The miners? The town? History? The living? It became clear how fragile context can be. A notch meant one thing to the maker, and another to the reader a century later.
And then there's the clean, uncomfortable truth. These notches do not resolve a life. They offer possibilities, leads to be tested, patterns to respect. Conservation may protect the surface, but it cannot rewrite the absent voices. Investigators may find payroll ties, or they may find nothing. Interpretation always arrives with a margin of error. The most responsible thing is to keep that margin honest, and to keep hands off from people who don't have authorization or the right tools.
In the end, the ledger remained a ledger, rows of notches sliding past a flashlight like a long, patient accounting. One last image, a slow pan across a measured map pinned under glass, an annotated photograph beside it, and the faintest mark at the corner of a stone that nobody could neatly explain. Look at it, and you'll see the same human quality in all of us. We mark time, we keep count, we leave small signals for someone else to find. The marks refuse a single answer. They are at once work count, calendar, and perhaps a small private plea.
If this episode leaves you with one clear instruction, do not enter unstable, abandoned mines to look for marks. Do not take rubbings. Photograph from a lawful and safe distance if you can, and always contact local authorities, mine heritage groups, or licensed conservators to report what you found. The same curiosity that yields discovery can yield collapse. Leave the hands-on work to trained teams who can document without destroying context. If this story stayed with you, subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you value what we do here, careful, curious storytelling about the places where beauty and danger meet, share it with someone who listens in the dark.
For resources and reporting guidance, check the episode notes. You'll find links to conservation bodies, cave safety recommendations, and where to report potential finds. Are you still with me? The night remembers these small tallies, and so should we.
Until next time, check the corners.